Hello, everybody, and welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. My name's Clayton.
My name is James.
Happy Friday, all. It's
No.
okay. It's a happy Friday for me, but not happy Friday for James. It was at Stamford Bridge last night. We may be cupping our ears on this pod quite a bit, but it's chip talk. We will get to Chelsea Tottenham later, I believe. Hammers, we've got a bit of a jam-packed schedule today, don't we?
Yeah, if I know people are keen to get thoughts on Gameweek 31 wildcard, and if we start with Chelsea v Tottenham, I don't think we're ever going to get there, to tell you the truth. So we will. Sorry, I just had a bit of an Ange frog in my throat then. If we, sorry, it's that one, isn't it? Sorry for the benefit of those on the audio. I'm cupping my ear to see what Clayton's got to say to that. Yeah, we'll cover Chelsea Tottenham at the end. Before we talk wildcard 31. And we're going to do what me and Suj did on Tuesday, look at a few different drafts, setting for bench boost 32, setting for bench boost 33. We're going to look at free hit 33. We're going to look at people with no chips left, i.e. no free hit. Obviously, you could set up for assistant manager whenever you want. I'm not going to factor that in. We will start with a little bit of chat, assistant manager. I'm going to have a little bit of a chat about why I've not done a draft for game week 36 a little bit later as well. Firstly, yay, we got confirmation yesterday
You were
on
spot on,
double
mate. Well
game
done.
week. To be honest, everybody, I think at this stage was very much of the thinking that Man City v Villa would go on the Tuesday in game week 33, Arsenal Palace would go on to the Wednesday in game week 33, and Forest Brentford would go into game week 34. It is the Thursday rather than the Wednesday, but in terms of your fixture plan and stuff, it is what we'd expected at this stage. Nothing is set in stone. We could still get some changes around 36, 37 that we'll get on to. So that's nice that that's coming the way that it's expected. Just we've had an update from Eddie Howe this morning as well at the time of recording. Bear in mind, we're recording sort of 10 o'clock in the morning. Eddie Howe's done his press, so it's exactly what we expected. Trippier, Gordon, Isak, all doubts for Monday night at Leicester. Anthony Gordon, we thought was penciled in to rejoin training today. Kieran Trippier and Alexander Isak won't have been seen by Eddie Howe properly yesterday because it was just a recovery day as they played Wednesday night. So it was absolutely inevitable that that is what he was going to say today.
Yep.
The game's not till Monday, so you ain't going to get any team leaks. I know a lot of us obviously want to captain Isak this week. A lot of us want to buy Newcastle players this week. So it's going to be a case of take your chances. We may get something in terms of training photos today. Newcastle ITKs generally are not to be trusted. I've
Yeah,
spoken
be
about this in the
careful.
past, that there are a lot of chances out there for whatever reason with Newcastle seems to be the worst. There are some accurate ones, but there are a lot of chances out there, and nobody knows today what team Eddie Howe is going to pick on Monday. So you know the risk. Assistant manager, firstly, though, because a lot of people are going to do that now. I said yesterday that my thoughts are that I'm going to go Eddie Howe for this week, 32, and then move to Mikel Arteta in 33. If I am somewhat spooked where I think Arsenal are going to mass rotate off the back of maybe beating Real Madrid in the Champions League, then I would maybe go to Pep instead. But it's planned for one transfer. And I think almost whatever route you take now, unless you truly are just going to stick with Emery or Glasner, who obviously now don't have their bonus in 31, I think you're looking at a transfer because the three kind of managers that appeal who have interesting fixtures this week for the bonus aren't great and they'll have horrendous 32 fixtures. So you've got Potter is at home to Bournemouth this week. He's reasonable. Suj, I can tell you, does not fancy it. You got Ruben Amorim at home to Manchester City. Now, United have performed better in some of the bigger games this season. And Thomas Frank is at home to Chelsea. Those three teams, respectively, in game week 32, play away to Liverpool, Arsenal, and Newcastle. I don't think you're leaving it for 32 if you go with any of them. Of course, the smart play here may well be just to go for Ivan Juric away to Tottenham. But in all seriousness, they also play Villa in 32, so you wouldn't be sticking with that either. Would you want to go for bonus? Juric against Tottenham and Villa. Maybe they're in form now, having drawn on Wednesday night. You played yours, haven't you, Clates?
Yeah, I played it a while ago. I can't even remember who I used it on, to be honest. But yeah, it feels like such a long time
Which is
ago.
perfect replacement. You can't even
Yeah,
remember who you played the assistant manager chip on. Was it
I've
Slot?
it was. I can't remember
Was it
if I went.
Moyes?
I can't remember if I went Moyes first, then Slot, or if I went Slot on both and then moved it to Arteta for the third, perhaps. I can't.
Oh yes, you lost to West Ham.
Yeah, I think I
That's what you
did
did.
that. Yeah.
Because Liverpool were at City. Yeah, you went Slot and then Arteta.
Yeah, I just can't remember if I had Slot for the first two
I'm pretty
or
sure you
if it
did.
was Moyes Slot then Arteta. But yeah, that's when I used my one. Yeah. If I had mine now, though, to be honest, obviously it depends on what other chips you've got and stuff. I'd be looking at very similar to you. I like the idea of going for the bonus games, like you just said. Some of the managers have some nice ones this week, but then in the midst of needing transfers around 32, 33, I just don't think it's worth using one when you're potentially going to need to use another to change the manager from 32 to 33. So I'd be looking at something very similar to you. I know it will be part of the discussion later when you talk about why your head is at where it's at with what we may see in 36, 37. But is there any argument for people to wait and use it for later on and that, or not really?
I think there'll be opportunities later on. Even if you look at something like Wolves' last two home games of Brighton and Brentford in 36, 38, and obviously the Palace game could, in theory, make that a double. There's every chance all three of them could be bonus games. There's a possibility. Wolves would probably be 17th, won't they? So if any of them other teams are 12th or above, you're going to be looking at a bonus. So I mean, you could look at something like that in the running. If you've got two wins out of it, it's going to be towards 40 points, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I never tracking what sort of ninth since Pereira took over.
Is that
So I
right?
think, yeah, I
Wow.
think so. So, but they're unlikely to jump up, I think, above 17th. But there are things in the running that you could look at. Obviously, that there could be doubles in 36. Can't promise you that. And again, because of rotation at that period, it might be easier to go with a manager. I think all the manager will play wise. I always wanted to look at Guardiola originally, with the idea being sort of like Wolves at home 35, Southampton and Bournemouth as a double in 36 if it happened, and then punt something else in 37 that you fancied. It might be it's Wolves at a Palace after an FA Cup final. It might be West Ham at home to Nottingham Forest. It might be Tottenham away to a hugely rotated Aston Villa, maybe even. There might be a few things. So I think there will be stuff at the end that you could target. And I do think, for clarity, it is much easier to play the bench boost in one of the forthcoming weeks than hold that later. I do not like it. I've been really clear on that, holding the bench boost to the end. I think it's going to be an absolute nightmare. I think both are better off being played sooner. I think the assistant manager towards the end is the bench boost towards the end is going to be so ropey.
Do you want to cover that off now as to why you think that is?
No.
Okay. We'll
Well,
wait.
okay, in short, I think there's if Tottenham lose to Frankfurt, I'm going to change the projections to no doubles in 36, in short.
And why? Or do you not want to do that now?
I'll cover it more in a bit more
Okay,
detail,
mate.
or we'll never do these wildcard drafts. So
Yeah.
let's start with this one. So I'm going to look first here at a set to bench boost in 32. Again, for the audio listeners, the visuals will really help you if you want to have a look on YouTube where we're going to have the teams up. But I'll read this out to you. So this is the draft for now with the intention to bench boost in 32. It is Raya in goal with Saliba, so double Arsenal defence, Munoz, Livramento, Salah, Saka, Sar, Eze, Gordon, Marmoush, Isak. The first thing you're going to be saying is no Mateta. I've put on the bench Verbruggen, João Pedro, Josko Vardiol, and Nikola Milenkovic. And I think you could make a debate this week whether you played Vardiol or Saliba or Munoz. You could debate that out. Wouldn't bench any Newcastle player playing against Leicester. I think if I owned Bruno Guimaraes or Sandro Tonali, I'd be playing them. I think like that's generally it's got to be minimum 3 points probably. That's how it feels. So that is obviously heavy loaded with Palace Newcastle. If you are wildcarding now, it is almost impossible to escape the double 32. Palace still have a decent home game this week. In Palace's case, it's obviously double double. Newcastle have a great fixture this week, double 32. I'm not quite sure how if you're wildcarding now, how you're not going with six from
Yeah.
those two
Agree with
teams.
that.
So again, a lot of these drafts are going to look quite similar with a few differences. This has a load up of Arsenal players, despite aiming for a bench boost 32, because I think ultimately it's quite clear to me at the moment what the three safest Arsenal picks are. And I
Yep.
certainly acknowledge it's not a certainty that Saka will start at Everton this weekend. But you are going to want him going towards 33, and ultimately it's going to save you a transfer putting him in now. The lack of Haaland means I can't find a good enough reason to go against Mo Salah. A lot of us are probably going to end up defaulting to captain him this week if we don't feel comfortable about Isak, because captaincy alternatives aren't great. Marmoush and Vardy were the two City I like. One point that someone asked me to make is what my spending power is. So this particular draft has zero point 0.5 in the bank. My spending power, i.e., if I remove every player from my team, which obviously you could do, remove all 15 players from your team on the FPL side, my spending power is 102.9, which I
Right.
think is probably around about average, I would say. Some will be less than that. Some will definitely have more than that. But I would add a note that the effective spending power is more than that because I'm up zero point 0.9 on Salah and Isak. So effectively, they're not coming out. So
Yep.
that takes it up to 103.8. I've got a little bit up in a couple of other players as well, right? So I think the effective spending power is actually around about 104. If you're keeping a couple of players like Salah and Isak, you've got like 500,000 up on them. I've had those two players since Isak November, December, Salah game week 8 or something. So it's 102.9, but it's effective more than that. Now, if we look at this team untouched, I'm not going to make any transfers during these drafts this time because I think the closer you are, the more you're just going for what you want.
Just one quick question. You mentioned
Yep.
Mateta's name. Was there any thinking in terms of going, I guess, Sarr as the third instead of Mateta and then João Pedro as a result? Or was it, yeah,
It was a case of having more confidence in João Pedro than any Brighton midfielder,
fair? Yeah, makes sense.
particularly with Jorginho Rutter's injury. There's not really a reason, and Danny Welbeck is problems, as we know. It's always had them, unfortunately. There's no real reason to think João Pedro is not going to play at home to Leicester in 32. And that's the clincher here. So the same team in 32, uh, this would be the bus team. Treble Newcastle with Livramento, Gordon, Isak. Home to you, United Palace. Now, of course, with those three as well, even if you went, say, Trippier instead, if it was affordable, although they might be doubts for this week, they're all going to be okay for 32. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Yep.
The Free Palace, Munoz Sarr Eze, obviously City away, Newcastle away, now confirmed. Vardy and Marmoush at home to Palace. Yes, it's conflicting in both fixtures for Crystal Palace, but it is what it is. Saka at home to Brentford. Remember, in Arsenal's case, unlike with Villa, Arsenal play Madrid Tuesday, the following Wednesday. So the Brentford game in the middle is there's 8 days separation between the two Madrid games. Saka might not start this Saturday. He'll start against Brentford the following Saturday. I'm certain of that. Salah at home to West Ham. And then the bench boost, Verbruggen and João Pedro at home to Leicester. Saliba at home to Brentford. That could be Vardiol if you prefer to play Saliba over him. And Milenkovic at home to Everton.
Yeah, I like it. Like you always say, your four worst players on the bench and they've all got a home fixture. I mean,
Yeah, I know people want to do their shithouse wankery stuff. It's fine, but ultimately you should bench boost when you think the four weakest players in your squad will score the most points. Now, how does that team then set up for game week 33? And you certainly wouldn't bench boost this, I don't think. Verbruggen and João Pedro away to Brentford, now Livramento away to Villa and Milenkovic away to Tottenham. So with the same squad, it's quite obvious that 32 is the better option now.
yep.
Now, importantly, you haven't, hopefully, barring injuries, you haven't had to make a transfer in 32. You'd land here with two free transfers if you're like me and only got one in the bank. Obviously, you've got the luxury if you've got four in the bank, magnificent. You can do loads more. But I think this would be fine. The single game week players would be Gordon and Isak away to Villa and Salah away to Leicester. And the rest is covered with doublers from Arsenal, Palace, Man City. So if at this point you wanted to go, right, well, I'm going to drag Isak down to, and there aren't many places to go, but down to Vissa, maybe, for example, for Brentford at home to Brighton. And particularly if we're running through, because Brentford's fixtures towards the end are really good. And you went, right, I'm desperate for Foden, Gordon to Foden, for example. you can do it that way. The only other doubler in terms of the forwards you could get here really is
I
Watkins.
was just going to say that I could see that being a move that people possibly go and do. Is that
So
to Watkins?
if you were desperate to get to the 11 doublers, it's right in front of your face, isn't it? Isak to Watkins, Gordon to whichever Villa player you wanted, Asensio, Rashford, Rogers would all be affordable if that's what you want to do. Of course, the heavier you go for it, the bigger the problem in 34 if you're not free hitting. But I wanted to show you what 34 would look like if you just left that with Gordon, Isak, and Salah, because I think this is viable to continue, maybe. So this would leave you with, in terms of starters, you'd have 7 for game week 34 if you just kept running. Now, chances are you're going to have injuries and shit, and I've got something wrong and you won't. But if you were lucky enough, you'd land here with the treble Newcastle with Livramento, Gordon, Isak at home to Ipswich, which is great. Salah at home to Tottenham. By the way, let me tell you now, don't captain Isak against Ipswich. Just a little bit of advice. For Bruggen and João Pedro at home to West Ham. Milenkovic at home to Brentford.
Why not captaining Isaac at home to
Because
Ipswich?
Salah's playing Tottenham.
Yeah, I walked into that one. Yeah, fair enough. Cupping his ears,
Do I need to
audio
cut my
listeners.
ear again? No, it's just one hand. You don't do two. It's just one. Right. So you'd land here, free transfers. You'd need a -4 to get it to 4.
Yeah,
And I think you could make the case that certainly maybe the Arsenal players would be removable here at this point. You could go something like Agbadu and Elanga for, say, Saliba and Saka. How much money are you putting in the bank doing something like that? And you might want to throw in at this point Cunha, home to Leicester, Ait Nouri, Agbadu. I also wouldn't overlook at this point adding Brentford players in because, as I said, I think their running is good. So if I had this, I could see me doing something at this point. It would be something like Cunha, to then maybe move to Vissa because Wolves go to Manchester City in game week 35. Put Mbumo, Ilanga, and maybe even just something shite like Nathan Collins in. And accept that the Forest Brentford players against each other wouldn't be great on that particular day, but would fall quite nicely. And Palace's fixtures, by the way, although not easy after 34, I don't think are terrible. Forest at home, Tottenham away, Wolves at home. Now, of course, there is the possibility as well if Palace get to the cup final that that Wolves game might get brought forward to being a double. So I think you probably cut the Arsenal players here.
I'd say I don't know. Like if we get knocked out by Real Madrid, which we probably will, then is there a case to say that you just want to keep them? Because I don't think
Yeah,
Bournemouth, Liverpool way tough, obviously, but I think Bournemouth, Newcastle, Southampton's fine.
I think it's more the chances are you'd look at it and you go, right, I've got Arsenal, City, Palace players blanking. You could still keep Raya, right? Because Verbruggen covers out. So you can still give you a little bit of, you play Raya in 35, so still give you a bit of Arsenal defensive coverage moving forward. I think ultimately you get that point, you think, oh, fucking hell, City and Palace players might double in 36, and you haven't got a
Yeah,
wild card to get back to it.
true. Yeah,
That would leave you with 5 City Palace. Imagine that circumstance. City Palace was the final.
yeah.
They
Then you
both
laugh.
then they played on the Tuesday in 36, both of them, which is possible if Tottenham have gone out of Europe, I might add. And you go, right, and then there's no more transfer, and you go, right, I need to get off these guys again in 37, and then you're using your transfers in 37 rather than 36. It's not that bad. So
No, not at all.
my point being is you need to land incredibly fortuitously, but maybe the free hit might not be needed for 34. What you could then do if you didn't use it and you did have that circumstance where City Palace was a double 36, you'd maybe even free hit 37 when they're blank.
Yep. Yeah, it's definitely. I think the way you've laid this out, it definitely shows a different option where it is manageable. I think, of course, and you did acknowledge this, the likelihood that you're able to get through without needing to firefight something is very unlikely, but still, it lands you in a way where it is possible to navigate. Yeah.
Just keep that in mind. I think most people who are bench boosting in 32 or 33 are going to need to free hit in 34, but that's a team there might be possible to carry on. And obviously, look, when you hit 34, you don't know what's going to happen in 36, 37. That's the same weekend that the FA Cup semi-finals in. But you might even go, well, I'd have a strong 9-10. Is it worth? I mean, if you landed with that team and you've got three free transfers, or even you could acknowledge it and say, "Well, I'll take a couple of hits." If you did get like Watkins and Rogers, still have maybe one free transfer. I take a -4 to put another two in and go for 9 and carry through because maybe I want to keep all the City Palace players and just go right. I'm going to remove Saliba, Saka, go with 9. Could do.
Yeah,
Just
I think
just something to think about if you get there.
this is the other thing. I know you and Sudge have said previously many times as well. In a blank, you don't necessarily always need 11 as long as you cover off the big hitters and the biggest EOs and stuff. So you may get to a position where you land and you can cover it all, like you say, getting to 9 players and feeling like okay, it's just damage limitation that week.
The other thing to acknowledge for 34 is, of course, because Forest are playing Brentford, it's not till the Thursday. Forest players would have to get through a FA Cup semi-final unscathed. You could get a Milenkovic or an Alanga if you went for something like got injured, right? There is some suggestion that Chris Wood might even be back for Nottingham Forest
Yeah.
this weekend. So I certainly think he's going to be back by around about this point. You might want to go Marmoush to Wood. Might be a possibility at that sort of point. Now, if we look at setting for bench boost 33 instead, I think you will have to free hit in 34. I just think you're way too committed to it.
Yeah.
So this is just to show you different draft, and this is a different way of doing it. And by the way, you would love to bench this boost, this substitutes bench for bench boost. It looks absolutely insane. So this draft, I've gone with Martinez and Areola. Martinez, I would class as the most likely Aston Villa player to play twice in the double as it stands, and also at Southampton in game week 32. I've gone on this one. I've gone double Newcastle defence of Trippier and Livramento. I've gone Saliba, Munoz and Vardiol still there as well. Midfield players, I've gone for a Salah, Saka, Sarr, Familia. This one I've put in Jared Bowen
Yep.
and I've put in Morgan Rogers. Front three is back to the template one, Mateta, Marmoush, and Isak. Now, I don't know what kind of benching headache you would have this week with that 15-man squad. I've busted it as Areola at home to Bournemouth, Rogers at home to Forest, Munoz at home to Brighton, and Vardy away to Manchester United as the bench. No, you cannot wildcard and bench boost at the same time. Just to show you how that would look in game week 32. So you've got your 6 doublers, Trippier, Livramento, Isak, Munoz, Sarr, Mateta. You got Saliba and Saka at home to Brentford, Martinez at Southampton, Salah against West Ham, Marmoush against Crystal Palace. Now, I would even argue, looking at Rogers and Vardy on the bench, you'd even say, are those two players alone worth considering a bench boost in 32? Bowen and Areola away to Liverpool obviously doesn't look good. And we have to acknowledge what I keep saying, although he's indestructible, Morgan Rogers should not play at Southampton in game week 32 because I'm absolutely certain he will start both games against Paris Saint-Germain.
Like you said, he's indestructible.
So you could bench boost there and it would just be like, and could Vardiol be rotated? Probably not. But you could end up bench boosting there with essentially Vardiol at home to Palace and 2 West Ham players away to Liverpool. So I don't think so. And
Having
again,
said that, I do think Bowen as the attacker away to Liverpool isn't awful. It's just the Areola where I'm like,
no, and
I
obviously
don't see a clean
you,
sheet.
if you're setting to bench boost 32, you're not going to go for Jared Bowen, right? That wouldn't make sense. You'd pick a different player and you might go Minter and you've got another 2 million to try and force something else in. You could also, if you're bench boosting 32, you could put Palmer in now. Think, right, I'm going to Palmer against Ipswich and then transfer to Saka in 33 because they're at kind of similar price bracket. I just wonder if there's a small chance, a little bit of concern I had, and I'm going to show you some drafts for some Chelsea players, just a little bit of concern about rotation for that Ipswich game because they played the Conference League the Thursday before.
Yeah.
Now, they should be comfortable, and the first leg is but the first leg is away. So they're in Poland on the Thursday and it's Ipswich on the Sunday.
One question I've got on this draft, the inclusion of Bowen on a bench boost 33, where you would then, sorry, was this the bench boost 33 free hit
Yes.
34 strategy? So
Yes.
I take it he's in because Southampton at home as part of the bench boost 33, but then 34, I'm sure you'll get there.
You have to, I'm not even going to look at 34. You have to free hit at 34 if you're taking this strategy, I think.
Sure.
Because you're just going to end up committing way too hard for the doublers. If you have the luxury of 5 free transfers in the bank, for example, great. but probably the chances are, even if you're sitting there now with 5, you don't already have Crystal Palace and Newcastle assets and Arsenal assets, etc., in place, and Villa assets in 33. You're going to attack it. I think that's natural. So this would be the bus team in 33, untouched, running in with 2 free transfers. So Martinez and Rogers for Villa's double, Vardy and Mamouche for Manchester City's double, Munoz Sarr Mateta for Crystal Palace's double, Saliba Saka for Arsenal's double, leaving the single game week players in the starting 11 of Salah at Leicester, Jared Bowen at home to Southampton. The bench currently would be Ariola at home to Southampton, the treble Newcastle, of Villa away, the treble Newcastle away to Villa, Isak, Livramento, and Trippier.
This reminds me of there was one season where we were all in a position where our 11 was full of doublers and our bench was full of single players from one team, and I forgot who it was, but it completely shat the bed. But I do like the look of this one, but it's just a memory of something that happened before where it didn't quite go to plan.
Well, you wouldn't get here and not do anything about that bench.
Yeah,
Is the point.
how
You've
many
got 2
transfers you
free
got here too?
transfers if you've not had to use any. And that's your worst case scenario if you've not made a transfer. Again, if you're sitting there with 3 free transfers in the bank, you can do even more, can't you? So I think Livramento would be a certainty to go. And you probably look at saying, oh, Consa. Thinks, I'll maybe take a chance on it. But there's different ways of doing it. You might land there and go, well, actually, best way to do this is put something like, I don't know, Patrick Dorgu in to allow me to go Isak to Watkins, for example. You might be in a position where you feel more comfortable about a Drury and Timber, and Trippier to Timber is at a similar value. I think at least the 2 defensive Newcastle players probably go there. Or you go, right, no, I don't want to take a hit. I'm going Watkins and I'm going something like Konsa, and I'm all right with Trippier.
Yeah, I think this one in particular, I'd really find a way to do the Isak to Watkins, especially if you, like you said, you're going to free hit 34 anyway. And then I think Newcastle's fixtures on the other side aren't amazing from memory. What was it? Yeah, Brighton away, Chelsea, Arsenal, Everton. So I think if you can find a way to, like you said, whether it is a Dorgu to facilitate doing that Isak to Watkins, I think if you land there, that looks really nice, actually.
And of course, if you free hit in 34, you probably will go treble Newcastle back again for that free hit in 34, which might add a little bit of context to maybe wanting to keep hold of Isak. Particularly if you're up a million, for example, you might think, yeah, okay. Because if you think moving to Watkins, yeah, great. Go Watkins for Newcastle at home to the same fixture. Does Watkins then start at Man City 3 days later?
I'd think so.
We ain't even in the starting team at the moment. If Ollie Watkins doesn't start for Aston Villa tomorrow, we might have to ask the question, is he first choice?
Yeah, possibly. Lee, let us know.
Well, I know that's pretty much what Lee has said.
Okay,
Watkins is first choice, but if he doesn't start tomorrow, we'll have to ask the question. I think that's absolutely fair enough. Could it be that Rashford's going to play down the middle? And then that would make him hugely interesting, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
You'd then be thinking, now the only problem with that is adding here with this midfield. I mean, if you wanted to add Foden, what are you doing? You're not taking Mo out, I'm sorry.
No.
And I get it. His EO will probably still be over 100%, even though we got teams doubling. Would you want to take him out for Foden? Because Foden on paper's got an extra fixture.
I say no now, but I know what I'm like. On the day, I'm the sort of person that would probably swing that way.
And I do totally understand it, because the chances are you probably won't wear socks to bed. You probably won't captain. With all them doublers, you're probably not going to captain Mo Salah in game week 33. Therefore, he's a loser in the book. Therefore, there is a valid case to take him on because you're losing. But if we all captain Isak this week, that's the same, isn't it? If anyone decides to captain Isak this week, you want Salah to blank on Sunday, right?
Yeah, of course.
Sitting there and wanting Mo Salah to blank against Leicester is one thing. Sitting there wanting Mo Salah to blank against Leicester because he could absolutely destroy the bench boost 33 I planned for. No, probably the worst case scenario is he'll hurt a little bit, but no different to any other player that returns that you don't own.
Would there be a way to facilitate Bowen to that? But then Southampton.
But if you set with Bowen and then you cut Bowen at Southampton at home.
It's overthinking it, I think now, yeah.
So there is a case for that. Do you want to set something else that opens up the possibility to go to Foden, Savinho, Rashford, Asensio, whatever you want in 33? That midfield five probably doesn't.
No,
You're not going to want to touch that, I don't think.
no, it's lovely. Yeah,
That squad, by the way, only has zero point 0.1 million in the bank. So it is quite tight. Easy way to find a little bit of money. Go, right, I'm not going Trippier, go Dan Burn. Or Fabian shares cheaper as well. Might be a better one at around about that value. There's certainly ways to find a little bit of money. You know, heaven forbid you could go like Lacroix instead of Munoz. There are ways around it to find the money if need be. And an obvious one would be, right, well, I'm not going Mo Salah. Jared Bowen, sorry. I'm going to go with a cheaper midfield player in the first instance.
yeah.
You could even set that to go, right, instead of going Bowen, I'm just going to put Rashford or Asensio in now. Some will be drawn to do that, I think.
So have you got a draft set up for free hit 33?
Yes, and it doesn't look that much different to the others because I think naturally you are still going to be drawn to a triple Newcastle. This one shows Trippier, Gordon, Isak. So if you need to save money, then you can obviously downgrade Gordon to Murphy, Trippier to Burn, Livramento, whatever you want. This has still got 1.5 million in the bank, by the way, so it should be affordable anyway. Still got Triple Palace, Munoz, Sarr, Mateta. You're still going to want Salah. This one I've set up with Cole Palmer in because I think if you're free hitting in 33, having Palmer for Ipswich at home 32 and then landing with him at home to Everton in 34 is better than having Saka will obviously blank you in 34. So I think over this course, Palmer would be much better than Saka. Arsenal, by the way, on my planner, if you're free hitting in 34, between now and the end of the season, Arsenal ranks second on my ticker out the 20 teams. On a free hit of 33, they're ranked 20th.
Yeah, that's a huge swing in it.
Massive. Palace go right near the bottom on a free hit 33, but you're still going to be drawn to the 32, aren't you?
Yeah.
I think ultimately. One way of doing this might be to go Henderson as one of the Palace players, and then you could hide it. That's a different way of doing it, maybe. You may still want Vardy or Marmoush just on the basis of Man City's fixture. Remember, you don't have another wild card, and you might want them City players towards the end, possibly. So to read the full 11 out, I've gone with here Reyes, Munoz, Trippier, Vardiol, Salah, Sarr, Palmer, Gordon. The template three, Mateta, Marmoush, Isak. On the bench, a little bit different here. I've gone Jose Sarr of Wolves, Anthony Elanga, Nico Williams, Nottingham Forest, Lewis Dunk, Crystal Palace. Now, if you go into 32, you're obviously set quite well. And by accident, you might find you've got a team that feels bench boostable.
Yeah, I think so.
Because that same bench of Sarr, Elanga, Williams, Dunk has Sarr at home to Tottenham. And I told everyone all week long Tottenham wouldn't score at Stamford Bridge and didn't look like scoring at Stamford Bridge last night. Elanga and Williams at home to Everton, Dunk at home to Leicester. And that's got 1.5 million in the bank. So if you wanted to do something that sets it up, you think, well, I can go Milenkovic instead of Williams. Well, you can.
Do you think there'll be scenarios where people are planning to not use the bench boost, but then they just land in a way where they're caught up in the question of should I just use it and get it over and done with rather than waiting for the ifs and buts of later on?
I massively think that bench boost 32 is better than 33. And I think bench boost 32 in comparison to the end is light years away. Okay, do you know what? Ultimately, it might only be 10 points more, but I think it's so much better now. And I still think the assistant manager will be good use to you at the end. I really don't like the bench boost anything after than 33.
Yeah.
And I do also accept, as I said before, the assistant manager is more powerful and therefore it should arguably be prioritized. But particularly if you're chasing a Glasner, you might walk out of this period with not a lot. You have to accept that's a possibility.
Yeah.
We might go Eddie Howe, and Newcastle might suddenly lose at home to Palace and Man United like they lost at home to Bournemouth and Fulham and get nothing out of it. There's no guarantees on that assistant manager with what we've got in front of us. Just to show you how you would land on 34 if you haven't touched this team at all. This lands with 9 players.
Mate, that's decent to be fair, landing that way.
And 2 free transfers if you haven't touched the team to get to 11. And I think it doesn't look miles away from what a free hit 34 team would look. Every player is at home in 34. So you've got Sarr at home to Leicester, the three Newcastle, Trippier, Gordon, Isak against Ipswich. And if you're set in this way, I mean, there's no way in the world you wouldn't go treble Newcastle. And I felt on this route, you really should go with the most powerful three.
Yep.
Williams and Elanga at home to Brentford, Dunk at home to West Ham, and you land with Salah at home to Tottenham, captain, and Palmer at home to Everton.
There's almost a case to say you don't need the free hit there. If you land that way.
Yeah. 33. I mean, if you landed with the same bench, could you? It's the problem with the 33 is I think they're looking at the Newcastle players. If you look at this team for 33, if you had it, you still got some doublers. You're going to be so drawn to Arsenal in 33, and that's only making your 34 problem worse if you obviously commit to it. So it is useful, and obviously if you're looking at the treble Newcastle, the double Forest and Dunk in 33, you are gonna I've got to put Arsenal players in here, and then that is giving you then the next headache. So it's still viable to use the free hit in 33. Don't get me wrong. It works, but again, the team doesn't look ultimately that different. And just run you through one that I set up with if you had no free hit left. Again, it's going to look so familiar. Raya and Sanchez I've put here as the goalkeepers. Munoz, Vardio, Livramento, Dunk. I'll put Agbadu in this one as an enabler. Salah, Saka, Sarr, Murphy, Elanga. And again, the template free, Mateta, Marmoush, Isak. Now, this team has 5.6 million in the bank. So what I'm going to do with this example will show you kind of the stripped down version with like Livramento and Murphy rather than Trippier and Gordon. So you could go Trippier and Gordon here, and you've still got loads of money in the bank. You could obviously upgrade Agbadu to something more expensive. I wanted to show it this way if people were really tight for money. Can't be that tight, surely. No one's got like 98 million in the spending power. Some might. Suj, I haven't checked his team value recently. So just show you how this looked for 32, untouched. Looks fine. You've got your six doublers. You've got Vardy, Mamouche, Saka, Salah, Raya. You could even play Sanchez at home to Ipswich. Again, he's bench boostable. Sanchez at home to Ipswich. Elanga at home to Everton. Agbadu at home to Tottenham. Dunk at home to Leicester. There's so many ways it lands. Every example we looked at, you could bench boost in 32. Even that ugly one with the two West Ham players. Show you how you'd land in game week 33. Again, with no changes. So the ugly bit is the three Newcastle players in the team, as spoken about. You've got double Arsenal, you've got triple Palace, you've got Salah, you've got double City. Probably bench Sanchez, Elanga, Agbadu, Dunk, I think. And at this point, your two free transfers, again, you're going to probably do something about them Newcastle players. But
you got the money in the bank.
But you don't have the free hit. So you want the Newcastle players for 34. So you might have to just go, this is what it is. And leave it. And if you did, this is how you would land in game week 34. So you'd have three free transfers, 5.6 million in the bank. You'd have 8 starters, the treble Newcastle at home to Ipswich, Sanchez at home to Everton, Agbadu and Dunk with home fixtures, Salah and Elanga. And obviously the power of the 5.6 million to put in Palmer without problem. You might even want to go Jackson at this point. I imagine we'll land at 34 and Matthias Cunha will be quite popular. That's part of the thinking of just having Agbadu as an enabler who, he's handy during the blank game week, for example. So you can see across all 4 of those ideas that the players are fairly similar. I mean, you wouldn't go Agbadu that way, really, because you'd probably spend the money. I just wanted to show a cheaped out version.
It's good to see, though, the different variations, but despite that, like you say, there's a core group of players that you can kind of use to manipulate different ways.
Yeah. Now, I did deliberate at about 1 o'clock in the morning last night, once I'd got home from Stamford Bridge, of putting a draft together for a bench boost 36.
And why didn't you?
And I decided not to bother. The reason I decided not to bother is, as I said, if Tottenham lose to Frankfurt, I'm going to change the projections to no doubles in 36.
For anyone?
For anyone.
What does Tottenham have to do with everyone?
Well, if Tottenham have gone out of Europe, then obviously they could play Villa in the midweek of 37.
Yep.
And I think that's probably what would happen. But Tottenham have to go out in the quarterfinal stage. If Tottenham beat Frankfurt, you have to plan for Villa Tottenham to go into the Wednesday in game week 36 because Tottenham's semi-final second leg with Lazio would finish 6 days earlier.
And what about like the
You
Bournemouth?
cannot wait that late to make the decision. You could make a provisional. That's a possibility that they could make a provisional and say, in the event that Tottenham beat Lazio or Bodo Glimt in Europa League semi-finals, then Aston Villa Tottenham will be on Wednesday, May the 14th. Under the circumstance where Tottenham lose to Lazio, Aston Villa versus Tottenham will take place on Thursday, May the 22nd. They could do something like that. And we have seen provisional announcements a little bit more.
What
It's a possibility.
what would then happen to the Bournemouth City fixture?
I think under that circumstance where there was a provisional, I think City Bournemouth probably stays in 37 as well if the FA Cup final was Villa City. The reason I've always thought it would be brought forward is out of a little bit of fairness to Villa.
Okay.
Because Villa will be lumbered. If Tottenham make the Europa League final and they make the FA Cup final, there is no alternative but Villa to play Tottenham on Wednesday, May the 14th. And then Villa have got to play on the Wednesday night before an FA Cup final. So out of a little bit of fairness, City Bournemouth gets brought forward as well.
Okay.
Now, City Bournemouth can go on the Tuesday. Very interestingly, the TV fixtures have been announced for game week 36. Now, there are only 2 games announced not for the Saturday. Those are Nottingham Forest versus Leicester, which is really important. And as expected, the 4:30 is Liverpool against Arsenal. I did have an inkling that they might put that on the Monday or the Tuesday.
Said, yeah.
I now know why they haven't. And this is something I genuinely didn't realise. The Championship playoff semi-final second legs are the Monday and the Tuesday of what would be our game week 36.
So they're going to
The
have that
Sky have got
yeah.
big games on the Monday and the Tuesday night. And then if Villa Tottenham has to go on the Wednesday night, they'll go, well, Villa still competing for Europe. Fuck it, we'll put it on the TV probably. Like they've done with Forest Brentford has been picked up for game week 34. And that it's knowing that now has made me think, well, if Villa Tottenham didn't have to go into the Wednesday night, you wouldn't put City Bournemouth on the Wednesday night if City playing the cup final because we've got the Championship playoff semi-final second leg on the Tuesday night. So we'll put you just wouldn't. City Bournemouth can go on the Saturday, on the Tuesday. Surely would give them the 4-day break before the final and not the 3-day break. It's just logic.
Like you've said before, though, they don't always operate on logic, right? So
no, and TV will probably have their say, quite possibly. It makes sense to me though where the fixtures, and I think they're planning for that possibility. I.e., if Villa have to play Tottenham on a Wednesday, then it's probably right to put City v Bournemouth on the Tuesday. But big caveat here. In the circumstance of Palace or Forest, you couldn't do that. Because if Villa Tottenham has to go on the Wednesday, that's because Tottenham have played on the Sunday. And who do they play on the Sunday in 36? Crystal Palace. Now, could they make Palace play Wolves on the Wednesday as well to make it doubly fair? Yes. Could they do the same with West Ham, Nottingham Forest? Also, yes, but that feels particularly harsh because Forest would then play Sunday, Wednesday, FA Cup final Saturday. I also think in terms of game week 37, there's probably some learnings of what happened a few years ago when Liverpool played Chelsea in the FA Cup final and it went to extra time. And you might remember Liverpool was still going for the title against City. Remember City were 2-0 down to Villa on the final day.
Oh, shit, yeah.
And they nearly blew it, right? At that point, Liverpool thought, well, City aren't going to slip up, right? And knowing that they had to win their 2 games and hope City cocked up against Villa. And Klopp pretty much picked a second team at Southampton on the Tuesday night. And they scrambled to a 2-1 victory. Even though they were still going for the title, I think the learning would be, right, try not to put a team on the Tuesday even afterwards. Now, they don't want to do the Wednesday because that will clash with the Europa League final. And although we've had Europa League and Premier League clashes, I don't think UEFA would think too kindly to a European final clashing with a Premier League game. So I think the Thursday. Now, of course, under that circumstance, it's Thursday, Sunday at the end. But at least they've had a 5-day gap from the final. And also they haven't played in the week before the final either. So it's just right. It's those 2 at the end. You've got kind of 4 weeks to prepare for the final, then a 5-day gap after. That would be the common sense thing to me to do. But in the circumstance of the Villa Tottenham, if Villa make the final and Tottenham make Europa League semi-finals, you've got to put Villa Tottenham in 36. So I think there's possibly a fairness to other teams being thinked about. I therefore think that if Tottenham go out of Europe, as I said, I'm going to project that there's no doubles in 36.
Okay. When
It's
do
not.
you
It's
think we'll
not. It's not to
actually,
say that there won't be, but that's what I'm going to project.
based on when we were expected to get the fixture announcements and when we got them, do you have any idea when we can expect to know all of this sort of stuff officially?
Before 35. You can't.
100%?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. Any
yeah.
chance earlier?
No, because
No.
the semis are in 34, aren't they?
Ah,
So
okay.
can't be before 34.
Sure.
You need to know who's in the final.
Yeah.
It is worth caveating that and also saying that the way they've set it up at the moment, if Tottenham are out of Europe, then obviously in theory Tottenham Palace stays on the Saturday. Palace Wolves could go on the Tuesday. Villa Tottenham could be brought forward to the Tuesday as well. Could be. There's also the similar problem with Manchester United against West Ham. So it works the same way because United are playing West Ham. So obviously, if United make it to Europa League semi-finals, United play West Ham on the Sunday. Therefore, so then if the Forest fixture against West Ham was brought forward, that could only be the Wednesday. Don't force teams to play on a Wednesday night, 3 days for an FA Cup final, unless you have to. Unfortunately, in the Villa Tottenham circumstance, there would be no choice. And if that occurrence doesn't have to happen, considering that what I said about the Championship playoff semi-final second leg, I think there's a chance they go, well, it's not right to put a game on the Wednesday night. Put the games in 37.
Yeah.
And then they could do what they did on game week 37 a few. I think it might have even been the same year. They had 3 games on the Thursday night, and they didn't choose till like the Monday which one they were going to put on the TV. And they chose Villa Burnley because Burnley was in a relegation battle with Leeds. Don't no, it wouldn't have been that year. Might have been the year before. So yeah, 36, 37 is really up in the air.
Yeah. Okay. But we'll know by
Honestly, if
35.
if you want doubles in 36, I'm telling you, join me and support Tottenham and understand the pain I go through. Segue.
How was last night, mate?
Terrific.
I didn't actually watch the game. I've seen all the incidents, seen all the interviews, seen all the highlights, but let's do the lens of let's pretend we're doing the game week review pod and Chelsea won, Tottenham nil. What were the takeaways from the game? Apply it to fantasy before you have your little rant.
Right. One of the things you'll notice with these wildcard drafts, there's no Tottenham players, despite the fact we're playing Southampton this week and you're on wildcard. Yeah, no, don't do that. I think Tottenham will mass rotate on Sunday. Um, there are a few that I think will play again. I do think Dominic Solanke is one of them. But I think we can expect Tell and Johnson to play in the wings and come in for Son and Odebear. There is a chance even, I think, that it could be, say, Mikey Moore starts and then Tell plays through the middle and Solanke doesn't play. That I'm telling you, it's a possibility. Midfield is going to be something like Bissouma, Sarr, Bergval. Davis will play instead of Van der Ven. Pedro Porro will start in place of one of Spencer or Doggy. I would think probably in place of Udogi, and Spence probably plays again. Vicario will probably be in goal. If I was free hitting this week, I would definitely go Pedro Porro.
Are people doing that? Is that a thing?
No,
All right.
I'm just trying to say, if I was free hitting this week, you would be really drawn, wouldn't you? I don't think anyone's wildcarding in 32. I don't think because of the Newcastle fiction now against Leicester, you just go now, surely. And also, then wildcard in 32, you couldn't triple captain, you couldn't bench boost, you couldn't ask man, you couldn't do anything in the week. So now makes way more sense. But if you were free hitting this week, yeah, Porro would go in. I don't think I'd put anything else in.
Yeah, that says it all. Just Tottenham assets, not
And
really
if you're
of
thinking,
interest.
oh, I'm going to buy Pedro Porro, right? Pedro Porro will probably then also play against Frankfurt on the Thursday. So guess what happens at Wolves next Sunday?
Rotation.
I can't tell you. I can't tell you then if Porro's going to play Sunday, Thursday, Sunday. So he's going to play against Wolves. And he goes, why you want the Tottenham defensive asset? I get the appeal of Southampton this week. I know I'm going to get asked.
I don't think you are going to get
Rogue
asked.
captaincy pick this week is Brennan Johnson.
I don't think anyone's going to ask you that, mate.
But also, I before we played Fulham in 29, I said Johnson will definitely start. And I was right. We also got taken off at half time because it was so shit. We shouldn't rule out that possibility either. Right, so forget Tottenham assets. Chelsea assets, particularly again, if you're on that free hit 33 strategy, I think Chelsea assets really appeal. Brentford will be a tougher game on Sunday than what they had last night, although maybe not as physically exacting. It was quite interesting listening to Levi Colwell after the game and him saying, like, the fans really helped us through the end. We were struggling physically a bit, not helped by the VAR and the 12 minutes added on and all that, etc. And it's obviously a huge game for Chelsea playing Tottenham. It's the rivalry game. They didn't need the crowd; they'd have won anyway. But I accept the point of what he was saying. So you would expect like Reece James plays on Sunday. I spoke to Gary Mantle yesterday, actually, a Chelsea correspondent, and asked him, like, if James plays tonight, surely he doesn't play Sunday. And he wasn't quite convinced about it, but I think it's certainly reasonable to expect that he would play on Sunday. So that means someone like Gusto comes out. Attacking wise, probably won't change too much. I guess there's no guarantee that Jackson will play again. I thought he was outstanding, by the way, Nicholas Jackson. Considering that was his first game back, he gave Romero and Van der Ven proper nightmares. His in behind running was good. His link play actually really impressed me when the ball went into him. He seemed to win more duels than he had the right to do. I thought, considering he'd been out for 2 months or more, I thought that was an excellent performance up front. Cole Palmer was lively, had a few efforts on goal and stuff. Obviously assisted
Created a
Enzo
few himself,
Fernandez
yeah.
cross, was super cross. Drifted more to this left-sided 10 position. They were moving Gusto even out of possession. So when we had goal kicks, I don't know if this would have been visible on the TV, but when they were defending, they moved Gusto into midfield originally when they were defending goal kicks and left a big distance between Chalobah and Son and almost tried to coax Tottenham into playing that direct ball, believing that if Chalobah had to go out to Son, he could deal with
Yeah.
it. They kind of left that as a compensation, as a bit of a chance. They set up well. So Gusto then went in. It allowed Fernandez to then go and press alongside Palmer, the two wide players high, and obviously Jackson on the top of that. That inversion was infrequent when it happened in possession. And obviously, if Tottenham then played through and built towards the pitch, obviously Gusto was sitting, obviously, in a right back position. So decent tactically from Maresca. You can feel in that stadium the anxiety
When
from
like
Chelsea fans
when
and
they
an
have the
annoyance.
ball,
Yeah, the amount of times they get into like a dangerous position around the box, and you can feel the anger in the crowd that players don't shoot or go backwards. You really feel it, like a tension. It wasn't one of them like an on the night, like a desperation to shoot. It felt like I'm sick of this.
yeah.
It's beginning to piss me off. And you hear that a lot from Chelsea fans as well. They had countless opportunities in and around the box where they went backwards. I was quite stunned when I looked at the XG after the game and saw Chelsea was like not that much over one, because it felt much more than me inside the ground. But I think a lot of that was things like Palmer's cross across the box, then scrambles onto the line and Vicario picks it up. That comes off through doggy, so it doesn't register, does it? Right? So I mean,
Yeah,
that's
like
obviously a huge chance.
from the highlights alone, it looked like they were threatening a lot. But what you said there's certain moments in football where it doesn't translate into a shot or an expected goal, right? But like there's just a feeling sometimes when the team is in the right areas and they're probing and stuff. But I hear what you're saying. Like a couple of my mates are Chelsea fans, and they've been speaking about that kind of anxiety and frustration about not taking that final action at the right time.
Yep. I wouldn't have concerns if I was a Cole Palmer owner. I would not be moving to Bukayo Saka this week. I would be, well, I mean, I am. I'm prepping for that move in game week 33. I think is the right thing to do if you own at the moment. Brentford away is a challenge at this weekend. I don't think that's significantly worse than Arsenal going to Everton. Arguably, it's not.
Yeah,
Don't think
agreed.
we don't think Everton Arsenal will be high scoring, do we?
Nah,
It is, even despite Gabriel's absence, which has obviously been confirmed as season ending, unfortunately now. So yeah, I
one
mean, deserved victory for Chelsea, no question. They probably should have won by two, probably
one
would have been about right.
question actually that just sparked to mind. One of the drafts you had Sanchez in goal, right? Are we thinking that goalkeeper dilemma is just not a dilemma anymore?
My only concern with that, so say if you're aiming for a bench boost 32, because my temptation was putting me at home to Ipswich feels great, right? I've had 3 home league clean sheets in a row now, admittedly against the 3 worst away teams in the league. Yes, Tottenham worse than Ipswich in terms of defeats now, by the way. But Ipswich owns great fixture. You do look at it and think, it could be a clean sheet. And you think, well, because they're playing away in Poland on the Thursday before, could there be even like a rest for someone like a Colwell who always plays? Could they think it's Ipswich at home will take a chance? I guess we won't know till we see that team in Poland, right? They might also go, well, we're still going to rotate a bit in Poland. And if it goes wrong, you expect to twat them in the second leg, right? So it was difficult to know. But it also made me think that when Maresca has rotated his goalkeeper, it's been in fixtures like Southampton and Ipswich.
Yep.
So could Jorgensen play against Ipswich? Like the answer is yes. But as far as we're aware, Sanchez is number one choice goalkeeper as it stands. But I think if I was bench boosting 32, I wouldn't go him, I don't think. I'd rather go with like Verbruggen and feel secure about it.
Yeah, me too.
That's kind of my take. Plus Ipswich are better offensively than Leicester. I think
Fair play.
we can agree on that. And Ipswich obviously had a really good result at Bournemouth the other night.
Bringing it back to the game, your thoughts on the well, not incidents, but Caicedo's disallowed goal and the Tottenham one for Sol?
So, I mean, brilliant strike from
Unbelievable.
Caicedo. When it happened, it was one of them. I was aware even I was in the back row of the upper tier, which isn't that high. It's not like, I mean, back row upper tier on the Shed is still like 100 yards closer to the pitch than front row upper tier at Newcastle, for example. So great view. I was aware that there were players around Vicario when it went in and there's movement. And I'm always aware, so if someone's run across the line, you think, if he's blocking the goalkeeper side, it could be disallowed. I had to duck because I was so far back. The actual floodlights on the Shed end was blocking the screen a little bit. If I leant to the right, I could see it. My dad couldn't. So I leant and I could see the goal and I could see no one was blocking Vicario's path when they replayed it in the ground. It's like, yeah, that's a goal. There's nothing wrong with that. And you can tell the referee's delaying. And all I could think, again, in the stadium, you've got no information. You'd have been watching it on the TV and it's like, I can see the replays. I can see what they're looking at. I don't know what they're looking at. I'm wondering if that someone maybe was in Vicario's line of path. Maybe it was someone that was closer to the pack, a little bit further forward. I could only think that it was something from the original cross. And by this point, I had no idea if it was won by a Tottenham head, a Chelsea head before. I have no idea. And I still couldn't tell you because I actually haven't seen the replay of that. They showed us in the ground the line to show that it was offside after the decision was made. So who actually made contact? I know that the offside was given against Colwell. That's what they said. They showed us in the ground. Did Colwell make contact with the ball?
Oh, on that one, I haven't actually seen the replays back of it myself.
Oh, that's useless.
Yeah, I've seen the SAR one and everything, but I haven't seen that one explained back or anything.
So
But again, I wasn't watching the game though.
I'm assuming at minimum, either Colwell touched the ball or Colwell made a movement to challenge for the ball and was offside. Okay, the time that it took was a joke.
Yeah.
This is where the one thing that Ange says last night is about the amount of time. He's right. It's disgusting how long it takes. That's why we end up playing 13 extra minutes at the end of the game, right? Shouldn't be like that. And that was because of the two VAR incidents. Also, a couple of incidences where the two teams went to kill each other, which is quite normal when the two teams play each other. But this was nothing like the Battle of the Bridge. It was barely a bad tackle in the game as far as I could see. I don't know if that came across differently on the TV. On the SAR goal, he wins it. And obviously, I'm facing the other end and it's happened 40, 50 yards away. So I can't say. But it looked to me, and to the naked eye the first time I saw it, that SAR nipped in and won it. And Caicedo was then wrong side and thought, worst case scenario, maybe it will get brought back. He obviously hits this shot, which has a bit of swaz on it. It's well hit. But when he went to it, I thought, don't do that, mate. He's hit some swaz on it. Sanchez gets down to it, and obviously he should save it. And as per the data pod me and Suj did on the Monday during the international break, we actually said Sanchez got the best save percentage in the league. It certainly was that case before this set of fixtures anyway. I presume that's still the case because he hasn't conceded technically, right? So more the criticism been about, errors coming for the odd cross or distribution. Obviously, he does move, but he's got to save it, hasn't he? I mean, where he ends up pushing, it's weird. It goes above him rather than wide of him. So he's almost like he's come too far past the ball. And actually, the way it's swazzing should be going further away from him.
Yeah, anyway, he's like he parries it in somehow, yeah.
He obviously should save it. I celebrate.
That's what I wanted to ask.
But I'm also aware, because I'm obviously looking right through the pitch. I can see everybody. I'm aware that there's a big complaint going on.
Yeah.
My instinct was that it wasn't a foul when I watched it live at the time. I thought it would be okay. The amount of time it then took to give the decision is madness. I don't know what the referee was shown, but there were a couple of angles I would say where it was shown on the replay that I did see last night. So I don't know exactly what the referee was showing, but I saw a couple of replays last night where actually you couldn't quite tell.
Yeah, it's not clear and obvious, no.
They showed in the ground after the decision. No, it is. They showed in the ground afterwards a slow mo of the one tackle from one particular angle. So that's what they do after a decision like this to show you the reasoning for the VAR change. They show the tackle, and obviously everybody's up in uproar. And I leant round again, and I went, "That's a foul," and that was my take. I didn't need any other replay. I just needed that one to say to me, yeah, Sar's got a bit of the ball, but he's come through the back of Casado's knee to get it. I accept it. It's a foul. It's the right decision.
I think it's the thing of like what took so
Why
long.
did it
Right?
take so long?
Yeah, that's the
Brain damage. Literally should have been that one replay. And obviously he goes over, and so you think it's so annoying because you know that he's going to change his mind.
yeah. So it's
But
like
why
delaying
didn't
the
you just give
inevitable.
him that one replay where it was really obvious? And just go, yes, pretty clear that he's come through the back of his knee. Off we go. Fine. It was like 6 minutes or something. What was going on?
Yeah. Have you seen Ange's interview and stuff after? Because I think that's the big talking point, right? You're like we've joked about it a few times on this pod, but like, what's your take on how you interpreted what happened with Ange and the whole cupping of the ear stuff?
So it's like every time I go to an away game, it's like it gets worse afterwards. So I wasn't aware of this with Ange.
From last night, no?
No, the cup in India. I didn't
Yeah,
know till I was like on the train
sure.
going home. It's like, oh fucking hell, man. Sorry, I'm just checking Twitter to check that he's not been sacked. Actually, that's another reason for leaving this conversation towards the end. Um, no, he's done his press conference.
He's
He's
had his
not been
presser,
sacked.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if we've got any injuries or anyway. So he took Bergval off and put Saar on. I thought the change was fine and see why. Bergvall played a bit of a different role last night. So he actually, out of possession when Chelsea were deep, had a job to man mark Moises Caicedo. That was his job. So he had a job where he's got to stop Chelsea's first line of build from their midfield, basically stopping the ball going into him. As soon as Chelsea had it in a deep phase, he was to him. Obviously, once Chelsea built up the pitch, he was sitting more towards like a right-sided 8-6 hybrid to the right of Bentancur. So he had a real physical duty to perform last night that he doesn't normally have to do. And in the first 15 minutes of the second half, didn't feel like we touched the ball really. Just felt like Chelsea were completely dominant. He played one really nice pass out to Odegaard, but it came more about actually because he ended up in a higher position than he should have because he'd struggled to get back before and the ball got to him because Mickey van der Ven stepped out and played the pass. And he plays a nice pass, but that was only involvement. He was quite struggling, I felt, which was understandable because of the duty he'd been given. And Sari's all action, no energy.
Yeah.
So the change for me made sense. I didn't have a problem with it. The rest of the people around me had a big problem with it because I really like Lucas Bergvall and they feel like he's the one player that can kind of carry, beat a man, a little bit creative. And he's young. You feel more kind of attachment to these people. I think he's just turned 19 and he's a really good talent. But I thought the change made sense. Most other people didn't. Then it really started really loud. You don't know what you're doing.
Percentage of away end, you'd say?
More than half.
Oof.
I don't think there's any Tottenham fan that walked out of that ground that is thinking today, I want him to manage my team next week.
Wow.
I think we are at a stage of no return. I actually think if he did manage to pull off a miracle, and that's how it feels to me, by the way, because I don't think we'll beat Frankfurt. For those stressing, are you going to beat Frankfurt? No, I don't think we will, actually. We're third or fourth in the Bundesliga and got some very good players, mate. Ekiteke up front will kill us in the same way Jackson was really hurting us last night. So most of the crowd want him gone now. I was struggling to see anybody make a defence for him. And what he's done last night is unacceptable.
Yeah, it's so weird. I think
What is he doing?
it's have you seen his interview, the way he tries to pat it off like, oh
Yeah.
no, what are you on about? I'm just like, what are you doing?
I said this about when he was talking about injuries a few weeks ago. Actually, it's probably a couple of months ago now when it was talking what was happening with Van der Ven. Like he played 45 minutes against Elfsborg and then we never saw him for a while. Don't lie to me. Just tell me. Just, if he's out for another month, he's out for another month. Talk to me. Tell me the truth. What's going on? That's what I'm asking for. And that last night, it was like an arrogant look at me. I was right,
Yeah.
which then kind of doubles down as funny because the goal doesn't count. Even I can accept that most people must be pissing themselves at that. And so if you'd have just stood there and looked and like nodded or something, and you go, that's all right. It's like almost, yeah, I'm nodding. Okay, yeah, I got that right. It'd be all right. But the way he stood there, and I didn't see it in the ground at the time, by the way. I had no idea, but I've obviously seen it back. Turns to the ground, stands there, cuts his ear. The idea that he wanted them to make more noise. There's bloody limbs all around me. What are you talking about? You
Yeah,
want more
he's
noise and
full
stuff,
of
mate.
shit. He is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a lie. And then actually, after he does it, he stands there, puts his hands in his pockets, and glares at us.
I hadn't seen that bit, to be fair.
Sort
Okay.
your team out, mate.
Yeah.
So I can't defend him, mate. And if Tottenham sacked him today, I'd have no problem with it.
Yeah.
We had a discussion on our Patreon podcast on Wednesday talking about Frank Silva and Iriola and asking if any of them took over now, which obviously wouldn't happen, but if Tottenham dropped 10 million to one of them and they were desperate to go in it out, would any of them be more likely to win the Europa League now than Ange? And we came to the conclusion it was probably a no, because you've got to implement some methods. We actually felt Frank and Silva would have more of a chance than Iriola, judging that on how slowly Bournemouth started when he took over and it took a while to implement his ideas. You could flip that the other way and say, well, the physicality in terms of the pressing is more akin with what Tottenham are. We came to the idea that it probably wasn't true. I don't think he's got any chance of winning that trophy.
I mean, it's not a zero, but yeah, I'd say it's very, very, very unlikely.
I think it's madness, but if Tottenham lose on Sunday, and I'm telling you it's a possibility, I don't know how he makes it to the game. And I don't know what there's protest planned on Sunday anyway against Levy. And you know, the other thing that dawned on me last night is we want Ange out doesn't kind of like flow off the tongue.
No, it's because it's one syllable.
You
And
definitely ain't going to go, we want Postecoglu out. Like it doesn't work, does it? You'd have to sing, we want Ange out. But the don't know what you're doing is the once, well, if away fans are like that, you got to remember these are the people most commonly going up and down the country, right? If these people feel, and I didn't join in, by the way, but if these people feel like that, then you're at point of no return. They're not
yeah,
going to be turned with, and for to blatantly to do the year thing and then lie about it afterwards as well. Own it, mate.
that's it. Own it.
He
Yeah,
says, and this is the biggest thing. He said it again last night. So I'm not bothered. Right?
but
If
he
you're not
clearly is.
bothered, why are you turning to the fans and doing that
Yeah,
with your hand?
he's
He
so
obviously is absolutely rattled badly, and that I have to accept that, and I
yeah.
can't sit here and defend him anymore. I'm afraid.
Yeah, like you say, just at that stage, own it. But I think the one thing is, like, fans give it, right? So you have to be able to take it. But I think there's a bar you just don't cross as a manager in that level of accountability, responsibility, and that I would look at that as antagonizing.
Yeah, you
Personally, like
can't do that
you
to your
don't
own
do that.
fans, man. You
No,
can't do it. I did an Ask James stream for our patrons yesterday, and one of the questions was, how bad would it have to be tonight for him to get sacked afterwards? And I said if we lost 5-0, it wouldn't make a difference. That's worse.
I think so. Yeah,
It's worse. If we lost 5-0 and you go, and Chelsea are a superior team to us, I mean, we can all agree with that. Obviously, losing 5-0 would be really bad. But if we just got slapped badly on the day, went, look, we're really struggling for confidence at the moment. We're focusing on next Thursday and stuff like, all right, antagonise your own fans. You're at point of no return, mate.
yeah.
I've genuinely, look, he's done his press conference today, so I presume he's managing on Sunday. What I'd like Tottenham to do is do something that I think would benefit the whole football club. I think they should approach the United States of America and should offer Pochettino the job until the end of the season only, with no intention to make him the permanent manager. I mean, it would do two things. It would lift the club. There's no reason really in terms of that he couldn't manage Tottenham between now and May and then do USA again from June. It would do a couple of things. It would lift the club in terms of the morale and I think give us a chance in the Thursday night games. And it'll also get the monkey off the back for the Tottenham fans that want him back. because I think it would be a mistake. I really think it would be a mistake to reappoint him. And also, what I also covered on Wednesday's podcast on Patreon was I am not convinced on any of Frank, Iriola, or Silva. I think
Is
they've all
it?
got pros. I think they've all got cons. I'm not convinced any of them will get us back to challenging for a Champions League place. We're a little bit like Manchester United were at the end of the Ten Hag period, where there's like an inevitability of what's going to happen next, where there's a slight benefit with Tottenham versus Manchester United as a comparison. Is I think Tottenham's rebuild has already started
Yep.
with your Greys, your Bergvalls, your Odebears, that kind of investment. That's already started. You can make a case maybe with Euro that Manchester United's maybe started. The major difference between Tottenham and Manchester United is, though, one, they have a world class player that can win them any game in Bruno Fernandes. And do you know what he also is? Despite what Roy Keane says, he's a good leader.
Yep.
And my team ain't got any.
Well, you had Madison doing the interviews.
Well done. I saw him last night as I was struggling to get out the ground, and at least he didn't stand there like a dick like he did in the Netherlands at Alkmaar with a what. He came over, clapped, bit it, and he came right close to us. I admire that. But what I would say on Ange is, I know a few people critical of him not coming over to the fans. No, he shouldn't be doing that anyway, especially after what happened at Bournemouth. And ultimately as well, how many times have I seen this game this season? Chelsea, Alkmaar, Bournemouth, Nottingham Forest, Crystal Palace. All lost 1-0. Barely felt like we had a shot in any of them games. I'm not even sure in my head if I missed any. You might as well put Fulham 2-0 because the goal was so late. But missed any more in there, Clates?
Probably, but
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Can't think of any at the moment. That's just the away games, never mind the home games. So can't do what we did last night.
no. And I think it's with the interview as well, just the way he treats them as well, the reporters. It's like the guy, I think his name is Paddy or Patrick, asking the question everyone's thinking about.
It was
And
great
it's
when
like he tries
when
to
he said back
gaslight
to
them.
him when he said back to me, he said, "Yeah, actually, if I'm being honest, I do think it's a foul."
Yeah.
Like, yeah, well done, mate. Don't bottle it. Well done.
No, but yeah, like you said, once you get to that stage where you're treating the fans that way, and it's almost like he's self-sabotaging in some weird way where, I don't know, the way he treats other people, it's almost like the mask is just slipping. Yeah, it feels like the writing is on the wall.
Yeah, he knows he's done.
Yeah,
He knows he's done.
indeed.
Right, let's leave it there.
That's a wrap. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's Friday, so that is literally a wrap for the week.
It's Friday, yes. For our patrons, differential show this afternoon. For advanced tier patrons, team news stream is scheduled for 4 o'clock. For everybody on YouTube, deadline stream is at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, and game review podcast for game week 31. Maybe with a captain return, or maybe not because he doesn't play till Monday night. That will be on Monday. Smash a like, everyone. Hit the sub button for the benefit of the audio. 5-star review goes a really long way. If you are playing your wild card this week, very best of luck to you. Play it your way. Please be nice to each other, everyone. Cue music, please, man child.